All right, Catfish, let's do a book talk section real quick just by going to some feedback we got.
Okay.
First, we haven't had time to review it. We've just been super busy, but both Tim's Retro Corner and Wayne Rogers, both wonderful listeners. Listeners, if you watch on YouTube, please go down and read their comments because they're always so smart. They talked about how Adam Savage Mythbusters has done a lot of videos on this season of Silo, and they reveal a lot of things, including that there is a much larger complex for that room that Bernard goes in and Solo in his silo goes in, called the Vault. And so if you want to see some interesting models, it is going to be very, very kind of more than we've seen, just the big computer screen that we talked about. Let me jump in here and say Catfish and I recorded it before I had a chance to watch these videos, so I want to talk about them briefly. They are a bit of a set spoiler, but if you've read the book, they could point to where we're going. Adam Savage saw the 3D model of what the show calls the Vault in the server room. The way it works is the door, and let's use Silo 17 for a bit. So you know there are those two dead bodies that Juliette points out. They are outside the server room door, the big locked door. So there's a door to get into the server room. Then once you're in the server room, there are fans, big fans, as well as the servers, but then there's the big circle door, which is the door into the vault. Now, I haven't made it out on the show. The show's kind of dark, but apparently there's a signage on this giant circle vault door that implies, hey, this is power, don't go in. So that's why, say IT has a lot of people in working in the servers, they don't go through this circle door, but they think it's just the IT's power area in there. They're led to believe that through this giant circle door, it's the power for IT, and that only a few select people can go in. Once you go in the circle door, you're entering into something the show calls the algorithm room. That's this room with kind of all these lights, and there are drawers. This kind of step stair leads to drawers where there's a lot of things in there. And we've seen that so far. Now, the final bit of this is there's a third room. So the algorithm room, and then you can walk past this, and then there's a giant space. We would assume this is Solo's living space. It's kind of multi-levels. There's a balcony in the room. Maybe we'll see this in episode 6. We'll definitely see it, you would assume, by the end of the season. This giant room will correlate to kind of the space that Juliette and Solo are in Silo 17 in the book, as well as Bernard and his book shadow of Lukas go in the books. Doesn't really look like the way the book described it, but it is the place where all the secrets are kept, or at least all the secrets that this group knows about are kept. Some listeners have some great season 2 speculation on how it ends. Marco says, I think the end of season 2, Juliette is going to go talk to Bernard over the radio.
And Jay Buford 04 says, my theory for how to end season 2 is some kind of vague introduction to Silo 1. Then season 3 will likely be intercutting Juliette's return with Silo 1's origin. Oh my God, can they actually do that? Jesus.
1D Forever wrote, I was so happy to see the character of Lukas back. His reduced role is the biggest deviation from the book. I think they probably should have just combined George and Lukas on the show. I don't see this Bernard and Juliette taunting each other over the radio like they do in the book, but I do hope they finish the first book this season. They talk about how they were very happy to see Lukas back. Last week, we touched on it briefly, but you reread the book and you didn't feel Lukas too much. Any deeper you want to go into the character of Lukas and his role here on the TV show?
Well, I didn't in the book buy the love story between them. And then I thought Lukas was weird because he was like wishy-washy and just not a great character. So I think they're gonna retcon him here. Maybe he's the first person that ends up talking to Juliette, and I think it'll be more believable. I mean, definitely the Juliette in the show is not a softie,
right?
And she wasn't really a softie in the book either, which is part of the reason why I didn't believe their romance and everything it made Lukas do. So I'm more hopeful about the Lukas in the show.
I really liked Lukas in the book. I felt the relationship between Lukas and Juliette in the book. I really felt like it was almost strongest though in their talk over the radio. I thought that's where it really, I'm beginning to see these two together. Catfish, last week you talked about how in this novel, which, I give 5 out of 5 stars to on Goodreads, this novel, some of the issues that would maybe ding it, and really should it be 5 out of 5 stars, is because the characters are at times very paper thin. And I think that's a valid criticism you mentioned last week. But one thing I thought about it is that in some of my favorite novels, like in Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park, yeah, each character has a little shading. I think they actually have more characterization in the films, many of the characters. But I felt in that novel, and maybe even in this book, Wool too, that having kind of characters that aren't so, idiosyncratic and are kind of more everyman, especially the Lukas in the book. I felt he's tried to be portrayed as kind of a everyman in some ways. I think that is effective in getting me as a reader to kind of put my own thoughts into him. And that's why I was able to kind of maybe like him more. Like you, I think you are, I did suspect him a bit in the book because I know he's from IT and you're like, oh, everybody gets double-crossed. Is Lukas a double-crosser in the first part of the book? But again, maybe I think in some ways the fact that he was just kind of painted as this kind of everyman, this relatively good guy. When I read the book, in some ways that allowed me to kind of connect with him and put my own thoughts into him. So that's my thought on it. Hey, okay, let's get back to feedback. In one of the things for 2 weeks, we've been talking about, will the show do Shift? And we got this feedback from Robert, who said the second book, Shift, would be insanely expensive to pull off. And, you have to have this whole other cast to make this storyline work. And he thinks, you have this whole other, you have to do that on top of the show you're already doing. He says, it makes no economic sense to do the second book, Shift.
I can't speak on that because I have not read the second, at least not reread it.
Right.
So I cannot tell you. In fact, Bubba, I was listening to a podcast today that was interesting that say a lot of times when Apple does a show, in the deal is pretty much like a more than a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We will give you season 2.
Wow.
So they just kind of say like, yeah, you're going to get 2 seasons. I mean, that's what there's speculation after their expensive show Pachinko got a season 2, even though no one watched season 1. So the question to me, Bubba, is this the case with Silo, and are we even going to get a season 3?
Well, they're filming season 3 now. We are getting.
Then we're going to get a season 3, Bubba.
Okay. Read this feedback from our buddy Trouble Follows.
All right, Trouble Follows. That's what I call Bubba. The Silo series is the Wool book only. No shift.
The TV show is only the first book. Wow.
Okay, no shift or dust. 4 seasons for just 1 book. Then make fans beg to get the other books made into a few series or movies.
Wow.
Bubba, do you really think that they could have the rest of this book be 2 more seasons?
No, and that's going to lead us to our last bit of feedback and the last thing we're going to talk about in this book talk section, and that's Juliette Mayer Johns, who said, hey guys, you keep speculating on how this season's going to end. Why don't you just go look at the track listing for the season 2 soundtrack? Now, if you don't want spoilers about the TV show, maybe you've read the book, but you don't want spoilers about the TV show, please step out now. Okay, I'm going to give you a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the names of the tracks on the official, once again, the official Silo season 2 soundtrack include the last 2 tracks are called Opening Silo 18. Why would you open Silo 18? Interesting. And Burn to Death. So Catfish, you just read the book. What do you think those 2 tracks are implying? Opening Silo 18 and Burn to Death. Let's hear it. What would you imagine those are based on the book?
I would say it's Bernard to Death.
Well, no, hold on. Think about how the book really goes. Bernard walks out in the cleaning. He dies. After every cleaning, there's this automatic burning process that goes on because they want to burn out the toxins. And so Juliette is in the place where the fire is. So the way the book ends, once again, Juliette is racing back to Silo 18. She sees somebody coming out for a cleaning. She's like, oh no, and then sees it's Bernard and is like, let him die. He gets killed by the toxins outside. She realizes, oh crap, I got to get into Silo 18. So she goes into kind of the antechamber. And what happens after every cleaning in the antechamber is there's a fire to burn away all the toxins. And Juliette has to survive that burning. So Juliette is the one who is almost burned to death. So long story short, this track to me makes me think they are going to get to the end of the first book in season 2. It's exciting. Boy, they got 5 episodes to really get a move on with it. But wow, crazy, crazy, crazy.
They really do, because they still have things like Deep Dive.
Yep.
Turbine On.
Yeah, track 16 and 17. Exactly right. Heck, they have the track Ice Cream. We haven't had that track yet, have we? Has anybody had any ice cream yet?
Well, I don't know, but I think Underwater was the first time she went underwater, and Ice Cream was before that. No, that was when, wasn't Solo talking about ice cream?
Yeah, he might have, but... Oh.
Yeah, no, I think Solo was talking about ice cream.
No, that son of a gun. Hey, listeners, we hope you don't mind. We're reading these audio tracks. So brilliant. Thank you so much, Mayor Johns, on this feedback. For everybody here at Double PHQ, my name's Bo. You can find me on all social media at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM, at Fit and Trim on social media.
And I am Catfish. You can hit me up at G to the Man, GEETOTHEMAN on Instagram and Blue Sky. And we'll talk to you next week on
The Cleaning. Woo!